Hello everyone, Rabbi Jacobson here for another episode of Meaningful Live. Are athletes heroes? Some post-Olympic thoughts. I remember a debate raging in one of my classes a number of years ago, exactly on this topic. I don't remember if it was an Olympics or it was connected to the World Series or a Super Bowl. You know, sports, of course, captivates, consumes the imagination of quite a few people. It's a big business, whether it's football, whether it's baseball, it's basketball, now that we're coming from the Olympics. And the debate was, do we look at these athletes as true role models and heroes, in the sense that we want our children and ourselves to emulate them? They clearly excel in whatever area of expertise they have mastered, whether it's gymnastics, whether it's swimming, diving. I'm not going to go through the whole list. Whether it's track and field. Or is it exclusive to the areas that they excel in, and that's it, doesn't spill over into a moral or ethical model? In our day and age, it's not just sports. The same thing you can talk about Hollywood and Broadway and other areas of entertainment. People who become superstars, Hollywood stars, and we follow them almost to the point of hypnotic connection. And this, of course, has been analyzed by many. What exactly is going on? Why are we living vicariously through others? Why don't we live our own lives? Is it a form of escape? Or is it a form of imagination, fantasizing what your life could be? When you start following some of these people's individual lives, you're not necessarily so impressed. But yet there's still that glamour, the look, the fact that they can capture the imagination, capture attention of millions of people. So the debate was raging. How do we look at this? Is this a reflection of our superficiality and even some of our own duplicity? Or does it really have true value in our seeking heroes that will help us in our lives? Now, of course, both sides did not really budge. Everybody was arguing their point. When you think about it, the truth is there's value and there's a truth to both arguments. The fact of the matter is there are some athletes that are very stellar models of behavior. I mean, they try to showcase it throughout the Olympics to give that human interest element. Some of that can be exaggerated. Some of it is highlights what they want to highlight. But the fact is there are people who are superb human beings, not just in the area of their expertise, but also in their personal lives. Some have overcome tremendous challenges. And since they do have the spotlight, so many ways they can serve as models. But it's not guaranteed. It's not just because someone is excellent in their particular sport or athleticism that makes them that way. It can be despite that or as a separate issue altogether. In other words, one does not lead necessarily to the other. And that's why you find stars, superstars, who behave in ways that are atrocious. Everyone remembers O.J. Simpson as a linebacker, what he was like. And that did not necessarily mean that it spilled over into his moral life, as we know what happened afterwards. Yes, he was acquitted, but ended up being, he was found guilty of murder of his own girlfriend and her boyfriend, his ex-wife, whatever the exact status it was. And you see this especially in some of the more violent sports like football or boxing, that there is a certain violent element that affects their behavior in personal life. The film Concussion highlighted that in a very direct way. And so yes, for the image, people are trying to clean it up. But the fact of the matter is, you can be someone who has millions of followers, a star in your own area of expertise, and not necessarily be someone that one should see as a true hero. So really it comes down to how we define the word hero. We could say that's a sports hero. They're good at basketball. Michael Jordan, the best. In baseball, you have the Babe Ruths, or the Joe DiMaggios, or now later in our generation, in our time, the different heroes of our day and age. And that's it. However, the fact is that because of our media age, the publicity and the showcasing of an individual becomes so powerful that we do have that confusion, especially children who cannot distinguish necessarily. That when you're lauding someone and you're showcasing them and you're celebrating them, you think in terms, okay, this is a person in their complete picture, someone that we should see as a personal hero. So this is a great discussion, a great challenge to us of what we consider valuable, what we consider laudable, things that we consider that we'd like to emulate. And it really comes down to who we are as people. When President Trump was elected, I remember talking to different audiences. Some were hate Trump, some love Trump. But I quoted a Talmudic statement that said that every generation gets the leader it deserves. And I said this specifically to the anti-Trumpers by saying, hey, look, you know what? Maybe he reflects the age that we live in. You call him a liar, you call him a hypocrite, you call him a chauvinist. You know, maybe the things he's doing reflects our generation. So someone said, well, we want a president who's not like us, who's much greater than us. So I said, like who, like JFK? So at the time, Camelot, yes, he looked great in pictures and external behavior. Today we know a lot of things he did were not exactly so ethical, let's put it that way. So we need to look at ourselves. I remember in the Super Bowl when they had that wardrobe malfunction, and it went crazy. Children are watching, and how could such a thing? You ever see what is on regular the mainstream television in prime time when children are watching? The hypocrisy is literally laughable if it wasn't so tragic. You know, it's like suddenly people become these Puritans when we see things that are completely no boundaries and no laws and so on. I'm not here to criticize anyone. Everyone can do whatever they like. But do we really have standards that everybody feels, oh, these are the standards we should live up to? So in general, our moral condition is a lot to be desired, and we have a lot of work to do. And this is not meant to get into what your morality is and what your standards are. It's just good. It's a good type of mirror image to look at what we worship and what we value. And when you ask the question, are athletes heroes? We have to really ask the question, what are heroes? Who are heroes? Who should be our heroes? And on a personal level, I will say the following. When I see a mother, a father, or just an individual do something kind to another human being, even if there's no one else around and there are no cameras, to me, those are the heroes, the true heroes of our lives. Unsung in most cases, not celebrated, and very silent. When a mother just cradles her child, or a father, and just loves them, and that child grows up secure, knowing that they deserve love, knowing that they're valuable, is that not a hero? So is a hero someone that has to be seen on headlines, or on television, or in front of millions of people? Is that the definition? Absolutely not. Can someone with that limelight be a person like that? By all means. And when they are, they actually create what we call a sanctifying of God's name, a sanctification of what really should be a human standard, and we should laud them and we should celebrate them. But we clearly live in a time of dichotomies where we can have communications and connections on levels unprecedented in modern technology and be less connected personally than ever before. You can reach anyone, anytime, anywhere, and yet that doesn't mean connections, intimacy, relationships, love has improved. Some argue that it has actually decelerated, that's gotten worse. So it's important to be able to look at things in context. Just because we're living in times that we have so many gifts and blessings, that doesn't necessarily mean that we have evolved to that point. As a matter of fact, sometimes our technologies are far more advanced than we are. And very much of my own personal work is really trying to rebalance, at least point it out. So the fact that there is such excellence going on in so many different areas, everybody remembers the scandals. Gymnastics is always has captured our imagination. Look at the beauty, the eloquence, the poetry, the coordination. Almost miraculous. And then you find out what was going on in the training camps and the training rooms and the trainers, the different types of abuse by people who were worshipped. So to get, yes, an Olympic gold medal or any medal is something that can change your entire life. But how much of our souls do we sell for that? So once you find that the ugly side, the dirty side, then you start saying to yourself, this is not meant to throw any aspersions or to dismiss the value of people's excellence. It's meant for us to be a little more sophisticated, a little more subtle in making our statements. Not everything that looks great, and not everything that glitters is gold. True gold, that is. So not everything that looks good is fundamentally good. And that's why we have a concept of inner beauty and outer beauty. In the best of worlds, you want the outer beauty to be reflective of the inner beauty. But in a world where sometimes you can find a very strong inconsistency, people can put on a beautiful show, they smile to you but can stab you in the back, duplicity of different sorts, deceit. So it's not always the inner and the outer are seamless. In the Talmud it talks about that. Someone whose inside is like his outside, and someone whose outside is like her inside. And that takes work. Because very often we live in a world of projection, where if things look good, like the Madison Avenue cynics will say, doesn't matter what happened, it matters what people think happened. Perception, packaging. Packaging is key. And never underestimate the power of PR. That doesn't mean PR is bad. PR can be used for good things, but it could also highlight something that has no value at all. So we need to be wise to look at things and understand, is this only an external thing or is it also internal? And we can't be lazy and we can't be impatient. We have to watch, especially when you allow things into your home, into your life, streaming into your consciousness, into your family's consciousness, into your children, into yourself. You're a sacred human being, and everything that enters inside of you needs to be looked at. So if you find beauty, make sure that that beauty is also an inner beauty, not just an outer eloquence. Again, this does not take away from the hard work or the beauty and eloquence created by many of these athletes, or all these athletes. It's meant, how do we look at it? Now, there's no question, you can write a very romantic story about how one is inspired when you see a human being push themselves to the limits, to run a marathon, or to demonstrate feats that really require tremendous discipline and willpower, especially when you're overcoming challenges. Of course, that's an inspiration. It's an inspiration for all of us as we face our own challenges, to push further, not to give up. But we have to broaden the conversation and look at the inner and the outer. Vital, that's vital. You know, in English you say the face of something. The face is like a surface. On the face of it, it looks like that. When you look deeper beneath the surface, under the dashboard, not necessarily. In Hebrew, it's interesting, the word for face, panim, actually also means inner. It means outer and inner. Because the goal is to create seamlessness. And where do you see seamlessness most? Look at children. Children do not yet have developed duplicity. They have not yet learned to lie until the adults teach them to do so, by example. So what you see is what you get. That's why there's a certain innocence and purity that captures our imagination. You just see that beautiful innocence. You don't see deceit, lying, covering up. It's a kind of flow, which is really the essence of the flow of life. When your blood is running and circulating through your body in a seamless way, that's called healthy. As soon as there's some block, God forbid, or any impediment, that's called not healthy. So everything in life is about fluidity, about a pulsating energy that flows. It's a flow. And anything that's not healthy will be some type of block. So the same is true on a physical level and on a spiritual level. Physical beauty, physical perfection, coordination, athleticism is a beautiful thing to watch. But you want it to be aligned also with a spiritual coordination, a spiritual synchronicity. And when those two work together, that's when you see something completely extraordinary. So yes, you can have the style, technique, someone is sitting at a piano or another instrument, or in our case, we're talking about athletes, and to perfection. And the music that they elicit, the music that they generate, or the beauty that they generate through their athleticism is magical. It lifts the spirit and makes you feel like, wow, look what a human being can accomplish. But there's one further step, to make sure that we also have spiritual symmetry and synchronicity, a certain spiritual seamlessness. Because then when you see that the personality of the individual is also aligned with their level of poetry and eloquence, and their smooth and seamless behavior is aligned with the rest of them, then you find something that is through and through, meaning consistent from the beginning through the end. That is called truth. That is called integrity. That is called sincerity. Maimonides writes, in contrast to Bertrand Russell, who was once asked when he behaved unethically, so he was asked by the ethics committee at Cambridge, you're a professor of ethics, how can you behave unethically? He says, I also teach mathematics and I'm not a triangle. Essentially the statement, you don't have to be what you teach, and what you teach is not necessarily who you are. Maimonides, in contrast, says, if you want to know who is the wise person, you don't look at their teaching abilities and their brilliance and their oratory skills. You look at their behavior, how they walk, how they talk, how they eat, how they drink, how they sleep, how they interact with other people. And you could say, what's the connection? That's a very nice person. No, because there's an element of seamlessness. The true wise person is not just wise in their brain, they're wise in their entire being. That their entire personality reflects the wisdom that they have in their heads. And that is what's required today more than ever, because the dichotomy, I would say even the disproportion between our advancements in technology, in medicine, in sports, in athletics, in anything, is so great that it only exposes that we're still fragile, simple, vulnerable human beings that have a lot of work to do on a personal scale. And we shouldn't deceive ourselves into thinking that the great successes in our standard of living, in our longevity, in our capacity, ability to do things, necessarily makes you a better person. Now you have to live up to it. So these are all great gifts and blessings, our modern age. But now we need to catch up on a moral, emotional, ethical, spiritual level. That's the challenge. So when I look at the Olympics and I see that perfection, I say, great, beautiful, inspiring, but now it behooves us to respond with that equal perfection in our personal lives, in the way we love, in the way we treat each other, in our relationships with each other, with our children, with strangers, communities, cities, nations, empires, and create a true symmetry where we all are indispensable musical notes, or I would say indispensable athletes, in one large marathon. Each of us carrying the baton through our leg of the journey. And together we complement each other. At the same time, we're all absolutely necessary in creating the beautiful, eloquent composition called life. And when we are able to achieve that, that is what is called a world that is perfected, an aligned world, a world that is aligned with its purpose, aligned with each member of the community, each citizen of this world, a world that will be basking in harmony, but harmony within diversity. Simon Jacobson here, meaningfullife.com. Please participate in the conversation. Share, like, subscribe, comment, criticize. I welcome it all, and I really welcome and invite you to share your thoughts, your suggestions. It's always an honor, a great pleasure. May you live up to be a true hero in your life and the life of your family, community, and everyone you come in contact with. Be well and stay healthy. Thank you.